Hi, everyone. So today I have a really special guest. Her name is Brittany. She's one of my nutritionists. I have a team of nutritionists. No, I have two. And I wanted to talk about something that we've talked about quite a bit in our support groups. And that is something you may remember I did an episode a few months back. We reviewed vegan cheeses, and it was like amazing because they were so delicious. And I'm trying to eat more plant-based, and Brittany is the go-to for this. She has been really talking about this a lot in our support groups. So everybody meet Brittany. Hi, Brittany.
Hi, thank you for having me.
This is great. This is great because it's such a good, philosophy of how our general diet can be. So, um, I'm trying to eat more plant-based.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk about the term plant-based. That term's relatively new, right?
It it is. It's new and it's exciting that we have that terminology now. And really, what it means is what it sounds like. It's just an emphasis of eating more plant foods. So it's basically a way to describe a way of eating where it encourages fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds, and discourages or the consumption of meat and dairy, basically. So just more plants and less animal sources.
Right. Yeah,
Just
it's
put very
great. And
simple.
because, it used to be, oh, you're either vegan or you're vegetarian. And
Yeah,
I hate to say it, no offense to my vegan and vegetarian friends, but to a non-vegan and a
yeah,
non-vegetarian, those terms are intimidating, and you tend to go, no, no, no.
yeah,
Whereas this mainly is a more well-rounded term that every diet should really encompass, because we're trying to eat less.
yeah. Yeah, and I think what's so compelling and interesting and even just beautiful to me about plant-based eating and just the word and how it's described is that it's just such a positive approach to improving your lifestyle. When you mentioned the term vegan or vegetarian, which is fine, but the stigma with that is a very negative one of a way of eating that's based around what you can't have,
Right.
and that's the connotation. And so, unfortunately, that becomes a very negative connotation of, oh, to be vegan means I can't have something.
Right.
Whereas plant based has a very positive focus of what to eat, right? It's a
Yeah.
focus of what to get more of, and not so much a focus on what you can't have.
Right.
Yeah, because
Exactly.
the benefit is really in the plants that you're eating, and not that the primary benefit is what you're not eating,
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah,
Well,
and
overall, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've been really, of course, do I still eat meat and
mhm,
dairy? Yes, but I've really tried to limit it. And I
yeah,
will tell you, I literally feel a difference.
yeah,
I feel so much better after I've
mhm,
had a meatless meal.
mhm,
It's there's so much versatility, which
yeah,
people don't realize. They think it's limiting,
yeah.
and you can make anything really.
Yeah, and that's great that you put it that way, that you've been just trying to incorporate meatless meals. And that's what's so like almost liberating with it, is that you don't have to be um so extreme. If someone wants to dabble or just get their feet wet with plant-based eating, there's no pressure to feel like you need to go all in right away. If you want to just try a few meatless meals here and there, there's actually research that backs up the fact that any improvement toward more of a plant-based diet, so any amount of improvement, if you're eating meat 5 nights a week and you start eating meat just 3 nights a week and plants the other days, any little improvement in that direction, research is already showing that you're already going to start to reap the health benefits of that. And the more that you adopt it, I mean, if you're wholesale adopting it every day of the
Yeah.
week, then you're going to get more benefits. But even just a little bit of improvement, research is already showing that you're already reaping those health benefits, even just making those smaller changes. So
Okay, so that's a
that's
perfect segue. So
okay.
let's
Let's do it.
talk about those health benefits. You had put
Okay.
up a placard at one point in our support group, and
Mm-hmm.
I took a screenshot of it. And I think,
Oh, you did?
yeah, because I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
could you just go through the top, ones?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the most compelling is there's several studies, and I hope by the end of our talk, maybe I can give a few websites and different resources that you can share with whoever's watching this video, so that people can go and read for themselves. But there are several studies, and I can share them with you guys later if you want, that really started a few decades ago, just to back up some of these health benefits. But the main one that we found out early 80s was that a plant-based diet can actually treat and reverse heart disease. So someone who's already in has heart disease, has high cholesterol, high triglycerides, high blood pressure, and has been diagnosed with heart disease and is dealing with all of those repercussions, if they follow a plant-based diet exclusively, so that's full in plant-based diet as the treatment plan, that a plant-based diet can actually reverse heart disease. And then someone who just has heart disease in their family and is concerned about it, following a plant-based diet can significantly reduce their risk of getting heart disease later in life. So heart disease is the biggest one, which includes things like helping to decrease blood pressure and decrease cholesterol and triglycerides. So if those are your goals, a plant-based diet can help you to do that. The other health benefits is decreasing risk of stroke, can decrease or treat or reverse diabetes, and can actually help reduce the risk of certain types of cancers. So those are the major ones that we have well-studied research on. And then there are lots of anecdotal things that are out there that haven't been well researched yet, like autoimmune diseases, inflammatory diseases, arthritis, that a plant-based diet can really be therapeutic for. We don't have quite as much research around those yet, but I'm sure that that's in the future. So,
yeah, that was one that really hit a nerve with me, because I have lower back. Yeah, and I have arthritis. It's hard to swallow as you get older. Especially I even got it in my 40s, and it was like, what? But that was a big deal, because it's just there's so much stuff in meat. And do you think that this is a little bit of a segue, which we may or may not need to get into, but meats and it's the way that that the animals are raised a lot of times that has all of that stuff in it, like whether it's antibiotics or.
Sure, and that is definitely a factor, but even more simplified than that, before we had the term plant-based eating, when I was studying nutrition in college 15 years ago, we didn't have the term plant-based eating, but what we already knew then and were studying was the basics of good health and nutrition is to decrease saturated fat and cholesterol, to decrease added sugars, and specifically to decrease those things from processed foods. But those are the major things: less saturated fat, less added sugar, less salt. And the best ways to decrease 2 out of those 3, the saturated fat and salt, and also cholesterol, is to decrease the amount of meat in our diet, regardless of what it is, whether it's beef, chicken, fish, or pork. All meat products are sources of saturated fat and cholesterol. It's just that the ones that we've been taught are healthier, like chicken or fish, they do have a lot less saturated fat and cholesterol compared to beef and pork, but they still have plenty of saturated fat and cholesterol and salt. And so for that reason, when we're eating it every meal of every day, weeks and months and years on end, it adds up. And over time, we start to be struggling with obesity and heart disease and diabetes and all of those things. So very basic, before we even get into things like antibiotics and things like that you're referring to, the very basics is that any source of an animal meat or dairy is going to have some amount of saturated fat and cholesterol. You can't get away from it, except for fat-free skim milk is fat-free, cholesterol-free. So besides that, as the exception, it all is going to give you that saturated fat and cholesterol, right?
And fat-free milk tastes like water. But anyway,
that's besides the point.
Exactly. But so it's interesting because, after the surgery, I wondered how I was going to handle dairy. Sure. And fortunately, but unfortunately, I'm fine with dairy. But
Mhm.
I am trying, I'm trying to limit it big time.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
trying to treat meats and dairy like, well, although I'm not eating any desserts like that
Mhm.
now or at all
Uh-huh.
now, but like, hey, a couple times a week, I'll
Yeah.
have those things.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of following back up with the more positive approach to plant-based eating. The other way to look at it when you're trying to find that motivation to eat more plant foods and less animal sources of food is that, it's that when you're eating more plant foods, not only are you not getting the saturated fat and cholesterol from your animal foods, it's not just about avoiding the stuff you don't want, but the plant foods are giving you things that you do want that the animal foods can't offer you. So those plant foods are not only not giving you what you don't want, like the saturated fat and cholesterol, but they're giving you and providing your body with all of those important nutrients that you need and thrive on, like dietary fiber, phytonutrients that are helping to reduce your risk of cancer. They've got the anti-inflammatory properties and a host of vitamin and minerals that our bodies desperately need. So you're getting all of those things from those plant foods, the more of them that you eat. And those are things, especially the dietary fiber, the phytonutrients that you're not getting from animal products.
Yeah. It's all about those pulses. So that day that we talked about pulses, which
Yeah.
remember you were like, I never heard that term even as a nutritionist. And I had never heard that
Yeah.
term as a foodie. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, what? So I posted that term
You did?
and
Oh,
oh yeah,
good.
and I posted the link. But let's talk a little bit about. So of course, pulses for those of you who didn't see the other posts, talk about that, and then also just if you could just you know, plant-based eating is really primarily beans and legumes, or legumes are beans, but
Right, right. So when
talk
it
about
comes
that.
down to the nitty gritty of putting together a meatless meal, the hope, if you're embracing plant based, is specifically that you're embracing what's called whole food plant based. And that means that you're not only avoiding the meat at the meal, but you're replacing it. That's the big deal, is actually replacing it with something that's very healthy for you. So the replacement ideally is a whole plant protein. So examples of those would be things like beans, peas, lentils, and those would be in our legume or our pulse family, but then also things like nuts and seeds offer protein as well. But as far as beans, peas, lentils, ideally we're getting those things every day and starting to view those things the way our culture views meat, right? Right. Our culture views meat as something that you gotta have at your meal or it's not a meal. So we just want to shift in how we see that and start seeing those beans and nuts and seeds as that's essential to the meal, the way that we used to see meat, right?
Yeah.
And so it's starting to put together those meatless meals by replacing the meat with things like those pulses or beans, peas, and lentils. Yeah,
Yeah.
is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, it's just because people, hear plant-based and
Yeah,
you're like, well, what is that? And, which also, by the way, for me, because I used to cook at a New Age retreat. And so
yeah,
I'm actually a big fan of tofu and tempeh because we
yeah,
used to
which are
cook with that.
great.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I know how to cook with them. A lot of
right.
people, my dad used to say tofu tasted like eating your pillow, which it does if you don't
Yeah,
flavor it. But it's
yeah,
all about seasonings and
yeah,
flavors and you can make
yeah.
so many things,
Yeah, and it
like
is. And I find that most people are more willing to eat beans as their meat and not so much tofu
right.
until they sort of get into a little bit and maybe more open to something like tofu or tempeh. But a good first step is just beans,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so I think what's great about the website, like the Pulses website that you said you shared, and some other websites that I can share, is just showing you that you can take some of your favorite meals that you make already and just make a simple substitution. Like in my house, we have taco night or burrito night, but we do it with pinto beans or black beans,
Yes.
and it's great, right?
So
And we don't
good. Yeah.
we don't miss the meat. We do the same taco or fajitas with the peppers and the onions and cilantro and avocado and salsa, but we do it with beans. And so, taking those favorite things, or a spaghetti. I just tried a new spaghetti recipe. I think it was from the Pulse's website. I'm not sure. And it's just my same whole wheat rotini pasta with spaghetti sauce. But instead of meat, you could take the time and make meatballs out of different substitutes, lentils, tofu, and different things. I didn't. I found a even simpler recipe of just adding cooked lentils to it. And they were, I think, the orange ones or the red ones.
Yeah.
So I cooked those separately and just add it into the pasta with spaghetti sauce. And it was great. And that's your protein, and that's it. And it was simpler. It was very easy. I think I had 5 ingredients. It was flavorful, plant-based, and it was very inexpensive.
Right.
Very inexpensive. That's another bonus.
You should mention that. I didn't even really think to talk about that, but plant-based eating is super inexpensive because you're eating beans. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, my focus is nutrition, but the fact is the other benefits of plant-based is environmental and also financial.
Right.
It's more sustainable and environmentally friendly for our planet. And it's also just, it saves money.
Well, yeah, and you hear people all the time, even on that, that, what was that documentary, the guy that ate all McDonald's every day for like a month or something?
Is it Forks Over Knives?
No, it was, I can't remember the name of it, but the whole premise was that, fast food and all of that stuff is cheap and inexpensive. And that's the whole thing, is that it's a lot of times it's because healthy foods are expensive to eat.
Right.
And well, it's really not if you really are smart about it.
Right.
And if I wanted to ask you, it's funny that you brought up pasta, because it brings me to my next question about how do you feel about all of these, plant-based, there's like at Trader Joe's, they have this red lentil pasta, and they have these garbanzos. How do you feel about those?
Well, specifically the pastas, I think are great. They've got red lentil pasta, or I've seen chickpea pasta. And when you look at the ingredient list on the pasta box, there's not a lot of ingredients there. That's not a highly processed food. The ingredient list is short. It's just like 2 or 3 ingredients, and it is truly made from lentils or from chickpeas. So those are great. It's the other products that you mentioned that you want to be a little bit careful of.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to follow whole food plant-based, if something is truly a whole plant food, like just beans, just lentils, fruits, vegetables, a whole grain like quinoa or brown rice, go, right? Yeah. As much as you want every day, do it. But if it's a packaged processed food with multiple ingredients, or something that's marketed as like a vegan beef or a vegan chicken, then you want to just kind of like yellow light, slow it down, pause, and take a look at the ingredient list. Yeah. So ideally, the ingredient list is short. Ideally, the ingredient list, 10 ingredients or less is maybe a good marker. And there are whole plant foods that you can recognize. But sometimes you'll find that. And other times you're going to find something that's a highly processed food. So even if it's marketed as plant-based or vegan, and you look at the ingredient list, it's got 30 plus ingredients. You don't recognize most of them as whole plant foods. There's a lot of added oil. Then it may be something that you don't want to include often. Yeah. But at the same time, all of these habits and changes is important to weigh with what your goals are, what your lifestyle is. If you have very little time for cooking, but you're trying to make some changes, then something like that may be a good stepping stone, right? Yeah. Depending on where you're at. But at some point, ideally, it's as many whole, minimally processed plant foods as possible.
Yeah, like they're good probably to have in a pinch.
Yeah.
It's better to have that than to eat a hamburger, let's say, or whatever.
Sure.
But to not rely on them, because that's
exactly.
Yeah. I always add to your list of, like, if you don't recognize the names, and also if you cannot pronounce them.
Sure. Yeah.
They're not good.
Then that's a good yellow light. Just slow it down. Take a second look.
Well, the good thing that I always say, like, with plant-based eating right now, bowls are so popular, having a bowl, and that's one of the easiest things to do is to make a bowl. And like, again, I love having fun with flavors. And
Yeah.
one of the things I've been dabbling in, by the way, is I know we're not really supposed to have spicy, but like
Yeah.
just a little bit of hot sauce and a little bit, just to kind of
Yeah.
see what I can tolerate with my little new pouch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all
Exactly.
about seasonings and flavors and
It
versatility.
is, and that's important because when you're trying to create a healthier lifestyle, you it's important that you find foods and meals that you are excited about, that you enjoy, that you look forward to. Because if you're making changes and the foods that you're eating and the meals that you're preparing feel like a bummer,
Yeah.
like then it's not going to work out. So you want to find those meal combinations, those spices, those flavors that get you excited about what you're eating, because you can't live the other way. Nobody wants to live life where you're dreading what you're
Yeah.
going to eat for dinner. You
Food
want to
is
be
joy.
excited. Yeah,
Food
you
is
want to be
joy,
excited about it. And so it's important that that we all are excited about what we're eating, and the flavors and those combinations that you're talking about. That's what that's about, and it's important to find that. Right. And do you mind if I share a couple of websites? Am I allowed
No,
to do that?
please do.
Okay, so you can, I don't know if you add these in your notes, but just a couple of things for people. There are lots of documentaries about this. Forks Over Knives is an old one. So if you haven't seen that like 20 years ago, it's still great. So check that out. There's also a few websites that I'd like to send your viewers to. Nutritionfacts.org is a great one. And I won't even try to describe it. Just go check it out.
Okay.
Forksoverknives.com for plant-based recipes. And then also I want to put in something for, this is a Cornell University website. It's nutritionstudies.org at Cornell University. They have a great nutrition program, and they offer just a lot of information specifically about plant-based eating. All of these websites that I'm giving, they're about plant-based eating, to just sort of give you more information, give you more background and history, show you the research. If you are a research type person, you want to see the research for yourself. These sites offer that, as well as examples of putting together recipes for plant-based meals. So check those out if you want more resources.
Great. That is excellent. It's funny. I've seen, of course, Forks Over Knives, but I haven't really checked out the other two sites. So I'm on it.
They're excellent. They're excellent.
I'm constantly trying to feed my brain here and keep my mind in that mode. So it's great. And I
good. Well,
think
Tammy,
a lot of
thank you. Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you. And I'll see you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye.